And welcome to the Aaron Katsman Show. I'm your host, Aaron Katsman. We're here to speak to you about your life, your money, and your investments. And as always, we're coming to you from the spiritual and soon-to-be financial capital of the world, Jerusalem, Israel. And when I mean the spiritual capital of the world, ladies and gentlemen, take a look. We're right here, the old city of Jerusalem. There's Jaffa Gate, David's Tower. How many financial broadcasts go to the old city of Jerusalem? I think it's incredible. And right down the road over there is where old meets new. You can't really see it. Our crack photography staff will work that out in the future. But you've got like a mall, the Mamilla Mall, where you've got all the top shops and everything like that. This is really cool. And we decided we're gonna spruce things up a little bit. We're gonna do a show from the outside, and what better place to start than from the old city of Jerusalem. If you got any questions or comments, feel free to email me at Aaron, A-A-R-O-N, at lighthouse with an L, lighthousecapital.co.il. That's Aaron at lighthousecapital.co.il. You can check me out on the web at www.aaronkatsman.com. That's www.aaronkatsman, aaronkatsman.com. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, Twitter. We're all there all over social media. I've got a really great show for you. Why? Because I want to answer listeners' questions, viewers' questions, clients' questions. One of the most, I would say, common questions that I hear, and I got it yesterday again, is for expat Americans, that's Americans living abroad, who have received letters, phone calls, name it, whatever you want, from their U.S. brokerage firms that they are no longer welcome at those firms. Yesterday I got a call from a man who was 89 years old, and he'd been with one of the biggest, most established U.S. brokerage firms for over 50 years. And he called me up furious that they told him that he has 3 weeks to move his account or they're going to cash him out. This is the problem that we've been dealing with now for years, where these U.S. brokerages say, we no longer want you. For expat Americans, that leaves you really hanging. What are you supposed to do? On the one hand, you want your money in the United States, where it's been, and if you take it out, there could be all kinds of tax consequences. And investing outside the United States is not so simple for Americans anymore. On the other hand, you need to be compliant. You need a place to be able to do it. So what I'd like to speak about is, A, what the problem is, why is this happening, and number two, what kind of solutions we can maybe offer to you. There are really two reasons. I think you break it up into two groups, why this is happening, why U.S. brokerage firms have decided to get rid of expat Americans. Number one is because certain firms view Israeli securities law as such that in order for them to give advice to you when you live, let's say, in Israel, you would need to be licensed in Israel. And since they don't have any licensed advisors in Israel, they decided to get rid of everybody. So they don't have that problem. So they feel that they need to be compliant both in the United States and in Israel. That same firm will make an exception, right? If you have like $3 or $4 million, you do a lot of trading. Basically, you assume that you are yourself an institution, then they can keep working with you because they don't need to have a licensed advisor work with an institution. As such, sometimes they tell people maybe to fudge it a little bit and sign off on the fact that maybe there's somebody that they're really not. So that's one group. The bigger group is a result of Patriot Act, right? We all remember the terrible terrorist attack in September 11th, a long, long time ago now. Time flies. And as a result of that, there were all kinds of laws that came in terms of money laundering and knowing your client and what have you. And a lot of the brokerage firms just don't want to deal with Americans who live abroad because it is too complicated for them. So they decided just to get rid of them, right? Plenty of people for the last few years, right, have been receiving letters from the top firms saying we no longer are able to service you. So the question is, in these cases, what is the solution? You're watching the Aaron Katsman Show. I'm your host, Aaron Katsman. We speak to you about your life, your money, and your investments. If you've got any questions or comments, feel free to email me at Aaron, A-A-R-O-N, at lighthouse with an L, lighthousecapital.co.il. That's Aaron at lighthousecapital.co.il, or you can check me out on the web at www.aaronkatsman.com. That's www.aaronkatsman.com. And be sure, of course, to subscribe to the brand new We just took off the saran wrap, right? The brand new YouTube channel at Aaron Katsman, where you can get all these videos, podcasts, everything's going to be uploaded there. So you should be sure to subscribe and tell your friends about that also. And as I mentioned, this is a special treat. We're coming to you from outside the old city of Jerusalem. Yes, the only financial broadcast that I'm aware of that broadcasts from the old city, so we get spirituality infused with your financial information. We're speaking about the big issue that's affecting expat Americans, right? Whether you live in Israel or you live in London or Paris or Singapore, many Americans have received letters, phone calls from their financial advisors in the United States saying they're no longer able to work with them. I briefly described beforehand what the issue is. Now, what are the solutions? So, you knew that was going to happen, right? I am the solution. No, there are plenty of brokerage firms that still will work with Americans who live abroad. Just have to make sure that your firm is one of them. One of the other issues when you have an investment portfolio, if you're an American who live abroad, is that if you're using mutual funds, just like brokerage firms, those mutual fund companies as well will probably not want to have to deal with anybody who lives abroad. So as soon as you move abroad and you change your address, that's going to make its way back to that mutual fund company. There's a good chance that they're no longer going to want to have your business, and they'll either liquidate your account with that fund at least, or will no longer able you to make any new purchases into that fund. This is also an important issue for those of you who are thinking of moving abroad, moving to Israel, right? You want to, before you move, if you're moving to Israel, if you're moving to London, wherever you're going to move to or retire to, you want to make sure before you go that you have a solution. You want to call your firm in the States and say, will you be able to service my account if I'm living in Jerusalem or if I'm living in Dusseldorf? Okay? Take your pick. Number one. Number two, what kind of limitations am I going to have on my account? Am I going to be limited in how I can invest? Am I only going to be able to withdraw money? Each firm sort of has their own policy, and it's really important for you to plan it, to know what those policies are so you don't get stuck, right? I've had lots of cases of people. I just had a case a couple of weeks ago, somebody who wanted to buy an apartment for their child, and they had about $500,000 at one of these firms, and they called the firm, and they wanted to liquidate the money, and the firm said, we're not doing anything. We won't even let you liquidate. You've got to move your account. And all of a sudden, they're stuck, right? Their hands are tied. They can't access their money. They need it urgently, and they're sort of in this like never land where they can't get any kind of help. So it's really, really important that if you're planning on leaving America to become an expat somewhere else, that you check beforehand whether your firm will service your account, and if not, check on the ground locally where you're moving to see if there are any firms that can handle your account. As I said, I'm able to handle accounts, so feel free to reach out to me. There are plenty of other firms, right? You can do this more informational, but you should know this is one of the biggest problems for expat Americans anywhere that is, whether it's in Israel here, the old city of Jerusalem, the environs, or anywhere else in Europe and Asia. This is the problem which is really, really impacting expats Americans who live abroad. Thank you very much. You've been watching The Aaron Katsman Show. I'm your host, Aaron Katsman. We speak to you about your life, your money, and your investments. If you've got any questions or comments, feel free to email me at Aaron, A-A-R-O-N, and Lighthouse with an L, lighthousecapital.co.il. That's Aaron at lighthousecapital.co.il. You can check me out on the web at www.aaronkatsman.com. That's www.aaronkatsman, aaronkatsman.com. You can check me out on my new YouTube channel. Please be sure to subscribe on Twitter, everywhere on social media. From the walls of the old city of Jerusalem, thanks very much for watching.